Okay, and welcome back. This time we're playing, well, we're doing the after action report for the just recently finished Shadow Empire run in the self-imposed challenge Fear of Walking, where we were doing it on Cerberus planet, which is the one with lakes of lava. So instead of oceans, we had lava lakes. We're playing as the quaint nation of Odessa League. We were, from a profile standpoint, trying to run merit, government, and fist. We were doing pretty good for that for a while, but then after the cities got spread out enough, we were having harder times getting government roles, and commerce. Something about commerce is like keeps popping up. Commerce really likes to be the society choice. And then because we were so spread out, a lot of our cities don't have a lot of quality of life. We're fist after all. We don't really want quality of life because it interferes with having how would I describe it? Having militancy. Not that a lot of our places have very much militancy. That's a different problem apparently, but it interferes with militancy. We do have a decent here, for example. We weren't really building quality of life up in places. And that was causing us to have all sorts of bad events, which would drive up the unrest and the danger, and that would drive up events that basically it was a choice of take unrest, so make the problem worse, send in the troops, which drives up autocracy. Autocracy suppresses merit, or pay off the people, which drives up democracy. We had a reasonable income and money, so we were often going the democracy option near the end. So that's why democracy is high. We were mostly going merit, and I think we still have most of the merit profile effects in play. Yeah, they're starting to turn off because we haven't been keeping it high enough. But we had most of them in play, and we've been starting to swap over to democracy as a side effect. Same sort of thing with government. At one point, we had most of the government ones in play, but we've been forced onto commerce. And then we have been able to stay fist most of the time. Keep the militia up. Not that we were after we got the fuel situation sorted out. We weren't necessarily on militia, but basically for this run, the self-imposed challenge was all troops that are not militia troops had to have some sort of engine to propel them around. The militia was the exception. The militia could come in whatever they would have, and I would use them. Examples like down there, which was one I forgot about. Because obviously you don't pick what the militia have. I could technically have disbanded units that weren't the right type of militia. But then that would have resulted in us just not, arguably at the early beginning, not having enough troops, and fairly early on the foot militia were the only things that could go into the high mountains, because the high mountains have this one drawback that wheeled and tracked vehicles can't go in them unless you've built a road. You can technically, if you can get control of a hex, you can build a road, and your wheeled and tracked vehicle can go in them with the road. But so early game, we, with the exception of the odd militia unit, couldn't go into high mountains because we had to, from our self-imposed rules, we had to stick to motorized troops. So because the trucks count, right? So the infantry can ride the trucks, so that counts. We didn't have any mechanized really, but the mechanized are sort of similar sort of thing. And motorized have wheels, right? So they can't go into the high mountains. We have an armored car around here. Had to use armored cars. This guy looks like his foot, but he's actually just missing a mechanized there. And tanks. So early on, we couldn't actually go into any of the high mountains. That was actually one of our early problems. Walkers I considered vehicles, right? So technically, even though the challenge is fear of walking, the walkers are like the exception, where yes, they're a unit that literally has walker in the name, but they have a motor. They're not foot troops. They're the exception, so we've got something going to mountains besides the militia. So the militia were the early game exception, and the late game exception were the walkers. But otherwise, everything all the professional troops had to have some sort of transport. And thematically, that kind of works with the planet. Our geology, temperature-wise, for the planet. The planet's average temperature was 63 degrees C, and on the the coldest the planet gets, as you can see here, is like 38C. The professional troops demand some AC. So we're role playing it as like, yeah, the professional troops, they're not happy if we're not getting them sort of AC to work on this planet. Obviously, the planet has minority mountains. It's like 17% mountains. Was mostly the game says plains. I would say mostly desert. It's mostly a desert planet. It's hot enough. It's nice when we weren't in the plains. It was rocky, but it's mostly plains. That prediction doesn't really give you the whole highlight of the description of the planet, because we do have large seas of lava. And this was actually a starting city. This is Odessa. This is where we started. We started on a lake of lava. We also, for the start, because of that house rule where I had to use vehicles everywhere, I decided it would make sense to start in a Tech 5 start. So normally, I start at Tech 3. And the tech levels here are squares of the number of techs you have. So Tech 3, you get 9 techs. Tech 4, you get 16 techs. Tech 5, you get 25 techs. Now, the first 9 are guaranteed. You always get the same 9 techs from the early tech tree down here. Well, it might now these days. It might be 10. It used to be 9 techs in early tech. 16 then starts giving you randomly some from basic tech, and then the Tech 4, which gives you 16 techs, randomly gives you some from basic tech, and then 25 gives you a little bit deeper into the tree. So we started, I think we started with deep core mining. Oh no, I think we had to discover deep core mining. So we started with the ability to discover deep core or synthetic fuel turn 1. We didn't have them discovered, but we had the ability to discover the turn 1. We started with enough techs to do that. So that was the point of doing a Tech 5 start, was so that we had some way to source fuel to make the run possible. Because obviously, if everything has an engine, we're gonna need petrol. We're gonna need the petroleum to get the vehicles moving. And I'm not, as you can see, this is not a planet with trees. I tend to find that planets either have good sources of metal or good sources of oil. Generally not both. And if I've got to play a game where I've got to have both vehicles and they're gonna be all vehicles, I decided when we were going to do this map that I wanted a planet with some metal. Also, vehicles don't necessarily operate well in forests, so having no forests and thus having, I think the petrochems in this game are usually a derivative of the planet having some sort of biosphere. So if the planet doesn't have a biosphere, you tend not to have oil. And the number of deposits is pretty consistent from planetary depth. So if you don't have oil, then by default the game will give you... Okay, it might not give you good ones. Like, this is not a good metal mine, for example, and I've got clicked here. This is a level 1 accessibility metal mine. But you tend to get metal, right? So I wanted a map where we had metal, didn't have trees in the way. The hills were a little annoying, because I hadn't necessarily realized that the high mountains were completely inaccessible to vehicles, besides the walkers. And had I done that, I might have tried rolling for a map that didn't have any mountains at all. And then I would have, in that scenario, I would have actually excluded the walkers. But we had some high mountains, so let's say we had some. We had a lot of high mountains. They could very often form like just ridges here. They're like, yep, nope. Good luck getting through here with anything that isn't a walker. So we definitely had scenarios where we had like arachnids encircled in the mountains where we had to wait for the walkers to come up and clear them. But yeah, so I decided on the Cerberus map. I wanted to play hot with lava. So we started sort of an advanced tech start, specifically so that we wouldn't have a long dash to petrol camp. Right, I was willing, if we had no petrol at the beginning, to sit kind of bottled in by the limitations of Militia, why we try to tech up into petrol. In this start, I wasn't necessarily expecting, and I kind of got lucky. We got a really nice ruined city start on this map, which definitely allayed a lot of the petrol problems right at the beginning. We also got lucky We found some artifacts, quite a few artifacts in the area. Rare artifacts, very rare artifacts, common artifacts, you name it. And the very rare artifacts in particular were particularly useful because they provided us not one, not two, but 3 cloning facilities. And oh boy, I think those cloning facilities, just being able to hold on to those cloning facilities, I think that won us the game. At the end of the game, we had 56.2% of the world population. And we took over 2 cities. So this is the capital. This is a city we took over. This is a city we took over. I don't think we took over any other cities. I think every other city we have, and we got a decent number of cities, every other city we have is a colony. So this is colonists being sent out to set up in places. Every other one is a colony made by me. And that's coming off almost entirely from cloning. We're able to get enough population to set up all these colonies from cloning. So yeah, that was an unplanned. The game decided it wanted me to have a fun, easy play instead of something really complicated and difficult. That also made power very easy because we got a lot of gravity collectors. We've got one here. We got one here. We've got one here. I think I got one over here. I think we have one over here. Yeah. I think that might be... Oh, no, I got one there as well. Is there one up here? No, I think that's all of them. Okay. And because of that, we had plenty of power, right? Okay, we have a couple solar panels because I started sending solar panels up before we had all the gravity collectors. And I had teched into volcanic power. So if we didn't have the gravity collectors providing enough... gravity collectors providing enough power, we could have run volcanic power. So we definitely weren't going to have any power problems. We did get into synthetic fuel, or no, deep core mining. We got into deep core mining, so early on, we needed a source of petrol. I think we did do a little bit of biofuel. We didn't max the biofuel, for example. But we got level 4 biofuel. This was definitely a good source of fuel. And then we did take the deep core. And apparently we didn't max the deep core. So we were at the point near the end game where we had all the fuel we needed. So I could be running full mechanized units, and I could basically be moving as well. Actually, the end game. I'm not sure if this entire front, if this whole front started moving, if we'd have enough petrol. That's maybe a question. Not sure how much petrol these guys are pulling. So these guys are running full bore. They're going to pull like 230 each of these units. We were up in the 55. So 55 times 230. It's like 1,000. Yeah, okay. So it's only going to pull like 1,000, 2,000-ish fuel. And apparently we're losing that to the void every turn. Okay. Yeah, so we probably had enough fuel to we could just go where we wanted to. Now, that wasn't purely from deep core. We did end up coming down here and getting robotization techs, so automated logistics, or mining robotization, industrial robotization. This may be the Mandela effect. I used to remember that these reduced the number of workers required for those buildings. At some point, it got changed to just being plus 100% yield. Plus 100% yield is probably stronger. But yeah, I remember it used to be less workers required for the building operation. Now they're just higher yield. They're plus 100% yields. But obviously, industry. Where's all our petrol coming from? Industry. So that's plus 100% yield in the industry. And we got fuel efficiency, or fuel mix optimization. We got a 50% in there, so that's another 50%. And fuel efficiency. So most of the vehicles are using less fuel. So that's we definitely reached the point where we're just like, yeah, we've got all the petrol we need. We got plenty of petrol. In addition, I suppose it's talking about the cloning, the graph collectors. We got automatic factories, I did build up quite a bit of industry, because obviously building roads through deserts is expensive. But we only had to build one industry up. I think we got like the one in the capital is pretty big. That's it, yeah. Industry 6. One industry is big. That's it. One really big industry. Now, right now, that probably means we'd have a real big problem if the capital moved. Because the capital's 725,000 people live in the capital. While I do have cloning facilities in this city and this city, those cloning facilities are actually being used to support recruitment. Mainly meeting our desire for colonists to go out and colonizing places, and recruits to fill up the army. So near the end, we were recruiting 3,000 troops a turn and 3,700 colonists a turn. Some of the colonists are technically coming from like hidden villages and stuff like that. So it's not all coming from cloning facilities, but yeah, the 60,000 people that we're just pulling out of cities. And not really shrinking the cities as a side effect. So that's why we're able to so rapidly grow. To be fair, I was putting most of those towards getting the cities bigger, right? Half of it's going to making the cities bigger. And we weren't running the 3,000 on troop recruitment the entire time. We only started doing that when we were thinking we were going to have to go to war with Blackland. I say that, and you look at Blackland like, wait, you're at peace. It's like, yeah, we didn't get around to that part. We won before that war became a thing. Granted, that would be the next thing. If we hadn't won the war before finishing off the Arachnids... Oh, these guys finished off the Arachnids. The Arachnids, yeah, we're at the position where it's time to... If we hadn't won, we'd be at war with these guys. So what would the plan be? We'd be going to war with them. So yeah, we did that. You can see there's roads and rails everywhere because I just need the logistics to support the troops running around. We came down here and so on and so forth. But yeah, let's get into some of the stats. So here's the troop statistics with total troops for everyone. Maybe not surprising that at the end we had the most troops. We have half the world's population, so having the majority of the world's troops is not surprising. Though maybe given the fact that we had half the world's population, we're definitely under recruiting, right? If we were recruiting at the same rate the other majors were, our troop count would be stupid. Right. Granted, then we probably wouldn't have won because we'd have a lower world population. We'd have a lower percentage of the world population, but you can see we had the most troops at a little over 100,000. Number 2, which is Blackland, who is actually the people who were planning on attacking, are probably troop parity with us. So that would actually have been a pure conflict if we'd fought them. I suppose we can actually look at how good some of their troops are. Okay, so there's their machine gun 2 guys. They're running around in heavy combat armor. They're not running their better Gauss weapons. Can I find a machine gun unit to look at? There we go. Yeah, they're not running charge Gauss, they're running normal Gauss. So their MGs are 1 tier out of date. Their armor, well, in comparison to my troops, they're 1 tier out of date. Their armor is 1 tier out of date. Arguably, our troops are probably 1 tier out of date on their armor. We're running mostly battle dress on our troops, running charge Gauss and battle dress. We have unlocked heavy battle dress, so we could upgrade these guys' armor and go up to heavy battle dress. So yeah, the machine gun, at least that machine gun there, it doesn't look like it's a great show off. Infantry laser rifle, heavy combat armor. Again, we have better armor. Infantry Gauss rifle, again, better weapon, better armor. And it's going up against motorized, mechanized troops, so it was probably not going to be a good day for them if it actually started a war. But pure numbers, right? So we're going a little bit quality over quantity, and yet we still have more than them. It's not a good sign for them. They're running 105s, where our artillery flipped across the border. We do have some artillery around here. Where is it? Put it over here. Where did I... I'm pretty sure I had some artillery units. Over here. There we go. Our artillery is running 300mm, so we got bigger guns than them. Yeah, so I think we've definitely been... Oh, granted, our armor is probably out of date. Let's be fair, the armor is probably out of date. These first... We still got most of the first generation vehicle or armored vehicles around, because at some point they just... They weren't dying against what we were running up to. Granted, they'd probably still deal reasonably well against this stuff. Quad MG still doesn't have the penetration to penetrate the armor on our old first-generation tanks. And we never actually upward armed the tanks. Granted, the tank v tank fight, they'd win the tank v tank fight. Their tanks are better than our tanks. Well, their fielded tanks are better than our fielded tanks. We've developed better tanks and just never got around to using them because we were punching the arachnids. And punching nomads, punching arachnids. Things where we wanted tanks, but we didn't need the best tanks. Though I suppose our heavy tank probably would have... Yeah, the heavy tank probably would have fared pretty well against our tanks. And we definitely could field more of those. And then our medium tanks are probably decent. Again, the medium tanks are kind of meant for beating up on infantry. If you come look at the medium tanks here. These are the first generation medium tanks. 105mm howitzer. So they've got the same gun that their artillery does, and it's got 25mm steel plate. I think we have a second generation of these that's running polymer that we didn't end up fielding. But yeah, so... Peer-wise, peer-on-peer, I think we would have been able to win that. Also, I don't see them having any aircraft. They got a level 1 airfield there. Okay, they got a little bit of aircraft. There's some airfields in here. Airfield level 1, airfield level 1, yeah. So I think we'd probably also have superiority in the skies. Yeah, so that's probably a war that we were going to win. It was maybe going to be a little bit more peer than I was expecting it to be. Because apparently we've got the same number of troops on both sides. Granted, once we start fighting, they'll be in a multi-front war. They're at war with the other major as well. But yeah. So getting back to stats, we have the most. Apparently we didn't have the most for most of the run. Probably because of I was being concerned about fuel. Honestly, fuel and industry. So right about here where I think I completed most of the industry products I wanted done. And then with that, I had the industry spare to be building motorized and mechanized units, kind of snap, 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 again. And you see our troop count just go up and up and up and up and up. As we basically, every time we're doing it, is another brigade coming out, another brigade coming out, another brigade coming out. Now, Blackland, who was the number 2, was apparently able to do kind of similar to that around about the same amount of time. Which is one of the reasons we're going to probably have a severe conflict. Though I was definitely not stretching my manpower to deal with that, to do that. So I think if this had continued, we would have attacked them, they would have started taking losses, we would have started taking their population centers, and we would have kept going up, and they would have started coming down. Guns! So these are the artillery guns. We don't have a lot of those. We have some. They're in important units. Honestly, for punching down at the nomads and the arachnids, the guns aren't really that important. If we got into the pure conflict, the guns would have been a little bit better. High-altitude aircraft. We didn't have very many of those. I think we had 1 unit of tactical bombers. Interesting. The nation that got the most of them actually started losing them. I think what happened is they raised them for usage, and were using them, and then lost the airfield is probably what happened. Lost the airfield to enemy tech. Infantry. All our infantry had to be riding a vehicle of some sort, whether it was motorized or mechanized. Though we still had... Apparently we're still competitive, given that. I suppose the militia were the exception. The militia infantry doesn't count. Low-altitude aircraft. Apparently I like low-altitude aircraft more than the AI does. It didn't use any of them to actually shoot anything. We were prepared for the Great War that didn't happen. Motorized. Fear of challenge walking. Everything needs to have a ride. We had more motorized than everyone. That's maybe not surprising. Actually, I'm surprised how little motorized the AI has, given how late in the game this was. Protector class. Is that the? Oh no, this is shields. I had one. I found one shield. Okay. Thanks. There you go. I raised a couple tank brigades, so we had more tanks than other people. Again, we're very heavily focused on moving units that have motors of some sort. So we're out tanking everyone. Maybe that's a bad sign for everyone else when their infantry is, or keeping up with their infantry and just out tanking them. Now, some of our tanks were out of date. Some of our tanks probably would have suffered pretty bad attrition if they got into a PR conflict. Walkers, we're the only built walkers. We need the walkers to go into the mountains, so that's why we built them. So as we look at casualties sustained. Oh, interesting. Did I not lose a walker? I must have not lost a walker. I would have assumed I lost a walker. We see the casualties, or no, that's true terms. Casualties sustained. Apparently, I was keeping my casualties down. You can see the majors were fighting each other, right? So they were eating each other, which is probably one of the reasons we won. They kind of killed each other instead of being a hazard to me. Guns, they were fighting each other, so those guns, we weren't really in a scenario where guns were actually ever threatened. Our aircraft never saw any losses. Their aircraft saw lots of losses because they're fighting both their high altitude and low altitude. Infantry, we were doing work most of the time because we were running around with motorized. It was lots of very effective encirclement, so in comparison to them, we didn't lose as many. Apparently, I went 125 turns without losing a truck. And then we lost one. In fact, I think we lost a couple in like one turn. We lost like a couple in one turn. Okay. The trucks apparently refuse to die. Mostly refused to die. We're not gonna look at protectors because I was the only one that had any, and it was a found one that never saw any combat. Tanks. I lost actually a decent number of tanks. It looks like we lost like 12 tank subunits. Far less than everyone else because I wasn't doing a peer-on-peer conflict. And then none of my walkers were lost to enemy fire. So this is zone populace, so this is all my cities. You can see the capital is growing pretty aggressively. I think the capital is the only place. At some point, I just excluded the capital from the draft. The draft and the colonization requests, so they were pretty rapidly growing as a derivative of that. And some of the other zones, actually a lot of the other zones were starting to decline, probably because we were doing a bad job of containing the bad danger events. Zone happiness is all over the place. Again, this is probably quality of life and not controlling the zone danger events. Didn't know zone happiness can go over 100, but apparently we had one of the landing zone places had it over 100 a couple times. Hunger, we were controlling hunger, so it never became a problem. Comparative manpower. So this is comparing the 6 majors. I think this is men both in recruits and men deployed. So we see ours is smoothly going up because we're not drafting or anything most of the time. I may have played like one draft card there. That might be what that is. Yeah, I think I drafted once for a scenario I wanted to deploy a bunch of troops. But otherwise, we were just smoothly gaining troops, and we were gaining faster than we were losing. And that wasn't the case for the other majors. The other majors had situations where they were actually drafting faster than they were using them up faster than they were drafting them. Comparative tech level, we weren't the tech leader. Apparently. Maybe I would have had to been a little bit worried about nuclear usage based on that tech level. Admin level, I was doing... Oh, admin is bureaucracy, so our bureaucracy was pretty good. Which probably means I was directing tech, the bureaucracy away from tech to other things if I'm behind them in tech, with a higher bureaucracy than everyone else. Okay. Civilization. This is quality of life. We had a quest at some point for raising the quality of life, which is probably what this jump was. But this goes up when the private queue, or the civilians build civilian buildings, like PlayStation and schools and stuff like that. Now, I was leaving that mostly to the private sector. I was focusing on trying to, you know, build industry and win the game. So ours isn't really going up. We did have, again, we have one demand to raise it, so that's probably what that is. This bit here is responding to that demand. Victory score. Yep, and I think it's mostly pop growth. Right, they're not really going up or down. If anything, they're going down slowly over time to us growing pop growth-wise. Troops. Apparently we had lots of green troops. At some point, we realized we had enough for the expanding front, and I was just tossing more troops on the front that was going to be Plan B war with Blackland to win the game. So that's why our green troops are going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. That's where that's coming from. Because apparently they weren't training up fast enough to counteract the rate, which was just expanding them. Regular season, so on and so forth. Not surprising that they're all regularly going up, because our actual good troops are probably not dying. We didn't really have that many losses. Morale was a little bit up and down. Some scenarios where we were outrunning the logistics where we'd get hunger strikes. And that would often correlate with the morale coming down as well. And you can see after a certain point our militia percentage is declining. Start off with only militia. We actually do the first like raise of brigade, which would have to be a motorized brigade, right? And then from then on, it's actually pretty stable, sitting around like 40-42% until I think that's probably when we start mass recruiting the front that never sees action. Inventories, and yeah. You can see I started expanding the ammo production in preparation for the war that doesn't come. Popularity wasn't doing the best to keep the popularity up. Our size was constantly increasing. That's nice to see. Oh, and that's the bureaucratic power. So we'd have to probably turn bureaucratic power on popularity off to get a good indication. Yeah, we weren't doing the best to keep the word score up. The word score is back down to 60-something%. No prestige damage. And we were spending our political points, yeah. BP and size, okay. Capital price index. Oil for a while was really expensive until we sorted out our petrol supply. And it didn't take very long once we sorted the petrol supply out for it to just be a permanent surplus, and we just collapsed the price of petrol. That's petrol. Goes up because we're kind of, every once in a while we're like tempted to buy it. I think the civilians need it as well. So petrol gets up to like game max price for a while, and then we finally catch up with like the deep core mining, and the price just goes down, and it basically becomes worthless at the end. Don't really see the same sort of trend with food. Food pretty much stays worthless the entire time. There was actually a period where the water was reasonably expensive, apparently. But again, the water once, I think every once in a while we had to remind ourselves to expand the water mining. Metal has highs and lows, but it stays pretty low. Rare earth metals stay pretty low because we're selling it. Radioactives, we weren't even engaged in that market. Machine prices were getting a little bit high, and then because of like oil and food and water coming down, and the rare metal coming down near the end, we did sell some machine parts. I don't think our society never got advanced enough to really drive up the high-tech part price. Casualties. We managed to keep the casualties pretty low this game. Highest single-turn losses was apparently 400 casualties. So that's 4 subunits being destroyed. There's a couple turns where we have like 4-3-3 back to back. But otherwise, yeah, we kept the casualties pretty low. We're not going to go poking through the logistics one. Looks like a nightmare to look through. We won. Construction near the end was going reasonably well. Every once in a while we get a delay on something high speed. It's probably worker shortage. Yeah, that's worker shortage in the city. Trying to build too much at the same. Well, high speed is pretty work intensive to build. So what's going on there? Mining. Whoops. That's why I've got water issues. The water mine ran out. Forgot to do the peripheral expanding on the water mine. Forgot to do peripheral expanding on our rare earth metal mine. Things I should have fixed if we were actually going to continue playing the game. Prospecting, other than metal and water and the on rare earth metal mine. Prospecting was pretty boring on this planet. Didn't find any radioactives. There are some radioactives like right across the border from us. So if we were to go to war, we would have taken that radioactive mine and been very happy for it. We won. Nebelblend apparently died. Wormrun was the first major I actually got contact with, and apparently they were never doing really good, but they never really did really bad. So they're there. They're still alive. They're not like Paysander, who apparently got smashed by one of the other majors. Nebelblend, who got smashed by one of the other majors. Or Blackland, Hoshkek, which are... Blackland's the guy we were thinking of attacking because they're next to us. And Hoshkek is the guy currently getting attacked by Blackland. How's the borders going over here? Who are we actually over next to? This is Cyander. Okay. And Hoshkek. And Wormrun. So yeah, it's the three that remained. Cyander. Okay, so Cyander is dying, probably being taken by Hoshkek. So they probably got a small town in there somewhere. That's probably their last town. Okay. Again, weren't really doing great. Was doing for a while doing a decent job maintaining the word score, and then we started to get some demands that didn't really. Well, usually it'd be demands like this, like, "Hey, get your meritocracy to 57." It's like, "Yes, I want to do that," and then all the events say, "No." That happens sometimes. It's like, I want to agree with this decision, I want to agree with this event demand, but the reality says no. So Wormrun, this was guys we ran into first. This is not the screen to see how much population they have. They had decent tech level 9.6, so somewhere between 81 and 100 techs, closer to 100 techs. Better admin than us. I think better admin than us. Oh no, we have better admin than them. Better civilization score than us, which maybe doesn't surprise me. Or... No, even our civilization score is better than them. Okay, so they're just they're chilling. These are guys who are dying. And not surprisingly, their civ score is pretty low. They probably don't own their original city. Because they're dying. Oh, apparently I'm doing a lot better in civilization than everyone else. I wasn't really even trying. Skip with the trade. Economy is going to give population numbers. Wormran. Sitting up. Population versus workers. In fact, you can see they're like 3/4 workers. Me in the list. We do. We can look at ours. So what is our worker to civilian? You can see our worker to civilian population is actually much in favor of the civilian population. Which is one way to generate money to pay the workers, right? So the AI is focusing a lot more on working and less on paying their workers. Cyander is almost out of civilians. Everyone either works in the government or is drafted for the military. Is not a good way to play, I think. 3/4 of them. So they're hanging around because they got decent worker population. Hoshkek is starting to run out of civilians. They're down to 10,000 civilians. They don't have a job. Blackland's probably the... Again, this is 9-to-1 worker to population ratio. So these guys are a bit over leveraged. Interesting, the guy who's sort of like the mediocre but still going player is probably the one that's least over-leveraged of all of them, from a population standpoint. Oh, no, let's tech the overview on 3 of them. That's fine. We're not going to go poke through the tech things. Oh, then maybe to see, do they have ICBMs? I think not. Yeah, don't see ICBM on that list. Don't see ICBM in that list. Like, they got nuclear plants. They're getting pretty close, just like I'm getting pretty close to ICBM launching, but it doesn't look like any of them have picked it up yet. And then yeah, tech-wise, this is how far the tech got. We got heavy battle dress. We had the opportunity to pick up robotic soldiers if we wanted to. I didn't really feel like I had the manpower issue. But that's the main reason you get robotic soldiers, is so that you've got a sort of a source for line troops that you care less about losing. So you're not trading your forces that quickly. We were working towards the atomic weapons. I think we may have actually been researching atomic weapons right now. I suppose I can take a quick look at that. Military. We just developed the atomic missile. Yeah, just developed the atomic missile. So one of the decisions would have been what to go for next. I think for the ICBMs... Atomic fusion missile, technically only requires fusion plant. So yeah, probably would have gone like actinide, tipped ammo, or tactical nuclear here to get the 4th one, so we can fish for the fusion missile, fusion plant. Get the fusion plant, the fusion missile. From the fusion missile, we can go over to, then we just need like jetpacks, and then we can get the ICBMs. So we were probably I'd have to go like with the fine-tooth comb to figure out if we were closer than they were. But I didn't see atomics on any of their tech lists. Bring them up again quickly. Looking for ammunition? No. Automatic? No. Okay, so these guys had atomic missiles. So we could have been on the receiving end of some atomic missiles, but I don't think any of them had ICBMs. Actually, look at Blackland. Blackland was the one we were going to attack. Ammunition, no. Automated. Automatic. Advanced ammo. Okay, so I think the one we were going to attack didn't have atomic weapons. So we should have been safe enough not to get nuked. They have nuclear power plants, so they might be running nuclear power. But they didn't have the atomic weapons deployment yet. But yeah, tech-wise, I think we got all the stuff we needed sort of optimally to wage campaigning. I may have wanted to pick up atomic cleansing. If we thought they had atomic weapons, we would have wanted atomic cleansing to clean up after atomic strikes. Probably wanted to pick up the Echo Tracer spy kit, so we can do a little bit more spying effectiveness. So this helps us with determining where units are if we're doing spies. And then otherwise it would have been nice dashing for the bomb. To drop the bomb on them. If we had manpower issues, we would have done robotic soldiers. Sort of flipping the scale around, that's probably something the AI should have done, given how over-leveraged their populations are. Would have probably been good for them to run for robotic soldier. Not that we had... I think we had better salvage than they did. Not that we had the high-tech parts to run that. Was probably at the point where I should have swapped over and model-designed up a heavy battle dress infantry and maybe swapped over to them. Yeah, we were probably about ready to do that. That would have doubled the number of machines per infantryman from 1 to 2. But I think that's something we could have stomached. We could have probably stomached that. Maybe not something the AI could have stomached, which would have given our infantry even more of a punch that the opposition did not have. Yeah, so our infantry, I think we're better than the rest of everyone else's. Not going to go through too much on the cities here. You can see different types of assets. Most of them are just... Most of the smaller cities are just basically a truck station, a railhead, and whatever the civilians build. Truck station, railhead, whatever the civilians build. Some of the bigger ones would end up at a rail station just to provide some rail transport capacity. And then once you start getting into the bigger ones, we're getting to places where, okay, I've actually got some artifacts to distribute at this point. So we've got Graph Collector here. This is one of the ones closer to the center. We got an air base here. Oh, I remember. This was up in the front line, so this ends up with an air base. It ends up with some barracks and stuff. Graph Collectors. Graph Collector, Auto Clinic. This is where we put in the high-speed rail. This was actually the first colony, which is why it's so big. This was also back when I was getting autonomous cloning facility, so we put an autonomous cloning facility here, autonomous cloning facility here. This is the only city we took over that didn't get an autonomous cloning facility, but a little bit bigger as a side effect. You can see some of these places are having a little bit of an issue with civilian workers. There's just not quite enough people in them. And then the capital has just got stuff for days. And had enough people that it wasn't having any issues with civilian workforce. Wasn't really caring a lot about my leaders, other than just try to keep them minimum relations. There's a couple that, like, the Interior Council was being a little bit of an issue to keep happy. But everyone else was generally staying happy enough that they got a job. Once they had the job, they got left in the job. Profiles, again, we were trying to go Fist, Government, and Merit. Changes in how things happen as time went on slowly dragged us into Commerce, slowly dragged us out of Merit into Democracy. If I fixed the quality of life in all of the zones, I probably could have dragged back into Merit. Merit events are pretty rare, where it's very easy to trigger autocracy events. We were triggering quite a lot of democracy events. Well, we were triggering quite a lot of autocracy democracy. And on those two choices, it's easier to suppress democracy with merit than to have merit suppressed by autocracy if you're going for merit. So, every 2 points of democracy removed by merit suppressing it removes 1 merit. Every point of autocracy suppressing merit will remove 2 points of merit before it gets removed. So if we want to go merit, we were rolling the democracy choices, picking the democracy choices, if it was just a choice between these two. And that's why we had low merit, because we were due to unrest, we were triggering events that were these two types, and we were picking this type just a lot. If we were able to get those events to stop happening, which would have been getting the quality of life danger events under effect, then those would have stopped happening, and then we probably would have been able to keep merit a little bit higher. Honestly, I don't know what happened with why commerce is so high. At some point it just got high, and a similar discussion here where autocracy suppresses merit, commerce suppresses government. So once commerce got too high, it just started suppressing government. We weren't able to recover the government. Fist was a no-brainer. We were able to keep it Fist high. We turned the cults and the corporations and stuff off. And to be fair, I turned the corporations off because if you have the corporations around, the corporations constantly want you to go more commerce. But yeah, so we got dragged in commerce, sort of against my will. The democracy was kind of my fault, but the commerce was against my will. Oh, we're still going through the menu up here. Techs, we already went over techs. Troop types. Again, we had the sort of the self-imposed challenge of fear walking. So we were definitely diving into vehicles. We developed pretty deep into aircraft. We didn't necessarily use the aircraft in actual combat. Again, the walkers were kind of to go into the mountains, so I never bothered with the heavy walkers. I suppose walkers actually unlocked robotic infantry, so we might have wanted to develop robotic infantry at some point, so it was a good idea to pick up walkers anyway. We didn't need any of the extreme vehicles. We didn't pick up monitor tanks, didn't pick up any of the shields, didn't pick up the tank destroyer assault guns. We hadn't gotten around to developing atomic launchers, though I think we could now discover them and now develop them. That was a recent thing. We got light helicopters, light copters. We could have technically done vertical takeoff aircraft, which we didn't do. And I tend to not care about the automated stuff. The automated stuff I don't think can move. Automated MGs, automated turrets can't move. And Fear of Walking said, no walking, jetpack troops have to walk, so no jetpack troops. And we did use the blueprints a little bit, mostly with the aircraft, as you can see. Though sometimes we were just like, yeah, I want to see, does it make sense for the trucks, what engine to run, APCs, that sort of stuff. But yeah, so that's basically my after-action review on here. This was a very interesting game, a very fun game, even though I didn't have to fight the majors. Didn't have to fight the majors to win the game. And I think we are playing on hard difficulty. So there are harder difficulties. I may, in the future, go up to harder difficulties. But with that, I think this is where we're going to go ahead and end this part, and end this... well, this is where this run in Shadow Empire is ending. I think I'm going to continue the stream. I think we'll go flip over to Terraformers. We'll do a single game of Terraformers where the stream ends. But if you're watching on YouTube, this is where this Shadow Empire run is going to end. This was the after action report for it, and will be its own independent video at the end of the playlist. So until the next part, the next game, wish you all the best of luck and a good time. Catch you all in the next part, and bye for now.